Hey guys, welcome to my shop. Today I'm going to answer some of your questions and we'll take a look around. This is the newest addition to the shop and I consider it the heart of the shop. It's a 3 horsepower industrial saw stop table saw. Really excited to have this in the shop. For years I've been using a 3 horsepower Powermatic. Great saw, but just doesn't have the safety feature. And since my sons will be using the shop now, it's just nice to know that I've got the safety of a saw stop. Plus it's just such a smooth saw. I'll just turn it on. This saw weighs about 700 pounds, so it's just smooth, there's no vibration. Of course, I've got the T-square fence, and that works great. This is the 53-inch fence, and as you can see, I'm running the saws face to face. So I've got the saw here, dust collection comes under the floor, goes into the saw. This is basically the island. I've got a little bridge here connecting the 2 saws, and then over here is the old Powermatic. This again is a 3 horsepower table saw that is wired to 220, so it has plenty of power. I did make this little storage area for my fence, and the nice thing about having 2 table saws is, one, I can set this one up with a dado blade, and also if I have to run wood that might be moist or wet, like treated lumber, I'll rip that wood on the Powermatic because I don't have to worry about it setting off the saw stop. I had a question about storage in the shop, and this actually is not a good example because this is doors with shelving. If I were to do this again, I would make any cabinet under, let's say, 36 inches be drawers. It's just a lot easier to be able to pull the drawers out and see what you have inside, as opposed to having to get down low so you can see what you have and then dig inside the cabinet. And this happens to be a pretty deep cabinet. So maybe in the near future I'll replace, or I'll just build some drawer boxes and put them in this cabinet space. So I've got storage under the Powermatic here on, I guess at the front of the saw. At the side of the saw, I again have some storage. I don't have any storage underneath the saw stop yet, but that will be a project in the near future. So this area right here is basically wasted space. In a shop that's this small, you really want to use every inch of space that you have. Let's talk about the dust collection. Right here I've got a little remote. This goes to a 3 horsepower Woodtech. It's nothing fancy. I've had it for probably 25 years. That's in a shed on the outside of the shop. The main dust port comes in, it tees off, goes underneath the floor this way and into the table saw, the jointer, and every end has a blast gate. There's also an area where it goes over the miter station over to the bandsaw. So to turn on the dust collector, you simply hit this button. What happened? That's a bummer. Think that's the same battery?
I would just try it.
This works, I'll be pretty happy. Okay, so we just had to replace the battery in this remote. So essentially when you hit the on button, it turns on. That gets the dust collector going. Then I'll turn it off. And it takes like a half a second and you hear it, it turns off. So that's great. Basically, this remote generally lives right here on the table saw fence. This is the dust collection shed. It's about 4 feet deep by maybe 7 feet. In here is the old Woodtech dust collector. So you can see it goes through the wall And when I hit that remote, this goes on. The nice thing about having the dust collector outside like this is all the fine particles that come off of this dust collector are outside and not in the shop. And I also don't have the sound of the dust collector in the shop. This is actually a pretty valuable space too. Right now it's a bit of a catch-all for some of my beekeeping stuff, but I'll probably do some shelving in here and utilize this space a little bit more. This is probably the second most used tool in the shop, or used just as much as the table saw, and that's the miter saw. This is my miter station, and this is the third miter saw that I've had, and this is the Festool Capex. I know a lot of people go on about how expensive this saw is, including myself, until I finally got one, and it's a game changer. It's a definite great saw. I have no affiliation with Festool, but if you have the money or if you want to treat yourself, you're not going to regret it because it's just so on the money. The saw that I started the YouTube show with was a Hitachi 8 1/4 saw. Then I went to the Bosch with the articulating arm, I think is what you call it. Anyway, the idea with that saw is that you could back it right up against the wall. You can see the space back here. That was to accommodate the arms of the old Hitachi. So since I don't have that anymore, I really don't need this space. But anyway, this is my third saw, and it's just a treat to use. Just so square right out of the box. And I have it hooked up to the Festool vacuum. So when I turn it on, you hear the vacuum come on. So really great dust collection with this saw. I consider this the tool wall, and generally when I'm addressing the camera or talking to the camera, this whole area is behind me, so I just think that looks good on camera. And I like to have everything organized where I can see them, or where I can see the tools. So I've got my drill bits here. I usually keep my drill and my impact driver right where I can see them. As far as cordless tools, I use Milwaukee. Not for any particular reason. I think Makita and Bosch and DeWalt are just as good. But once you get on a battery platform, I try to stay on that battery platform. If you're thinking about getting into cordless tools and you're looking for a platform for your cordless tools, just consider what tool company makes a cordless router, because some of them don't. And just try to stay on a platform where a tool company does, like Makita and DeWalt also make cordless routers, so that's nice. I've got my screws up here. This is a new addition to the shop. I've been working with Power Pro Screws, so this was a sponsored project for them. And it's really nice to have all the screws up here because I can see exactly what I have. And the thing I like about these screws is this container opens up like this. So it's just kind of easy to stay organized with these screws. I had a comment about clamps. It doesn't seem like I have tons and tons of clamps, and maybe I don't, but I have enough clamps. Generally, I have enough clamps between these Bessies over here. I've got some pony clamps over there, some quick grips. I've got a few Rockler clamps, and then for very long glue ups, I've got two, I think 8 or 10 foot pony bar clamps. This is my little compressor. It's a porta cable. Basically any small compressor will do. I think I had a Bostage before that, and I think they're basically the same thing. The nail gun that I use most in the shop is the 18 gauge nail gun, and it shoots nails, I believe, 5/8 of an inch to 2 inches. And this came with the porta cable. It was part of a combo kit for $250. I got a stapler, the 18 gauge nailer, and a 16 gauge nailer. But out of all the nail guns or pneumatic tools, I use the 18 gauge the most. I have a small Cadex 23 gauge nailer. This is great for small trim. And you can see the nice thing about this, what I really love about this gun is the fact it's got that little hook there. It's so convenient when you have a nail gun with that little hook to hook onto your pants, as opposed to this one, where you're often sort of like holding it like this, and it's amazing that little thing makes such a big difference in the performance of the tool. This is my bandsaw. It's an old Delta, at least 25 years old, and it does a great job. I would like to eventually upgrade to a Rikon. I know a few guys who have Rikons and they just love that saw. This saw is a great saw. I should probably tune it up a little bit more, get a better blade for it. As far as resawing capability, the Rikon looks like something that does a great job, and it's something that I'd like to add to the shop in the near future. Right next to the bandsaw, I have an Oliver drill press, and this is a new addition to the shop, and it works out pretty good. I don't use a drill press that often, but when I do, it does a good job. Over here, I've got an Hitachi 10-inch miter saw, and this is just a, just goes up and down. It doesn't pull out, nothing fancy. What I love about having a designated miter saw like this is you set it up with a sacrificial fence, and it's great for those small molding cuts. So if you're trimming out flat panels, it's just really easy to use the kerf in your sacrificial fence to line those cuts up, and it goes really smooth. The nice thing too is that this cabinet is on wheels, so I can move it around the shop wherever I happen to be working. So if I have a cabinet back here, I can use it, or if I'm over there, I can roll it out. In this drawer here, I've got all of my nails, so all the 18 gauge nails are here. I've got some 22 and 23 gauge nails back here, and also just kind of some stuff that I should go through and organize. Down here, this is a double-sided cabinet, really designed for paint cans. I was basically just trying to have a place to put all those paint cans that tend to multiply. So you have that shelf on this side, and then if we flip or spin the cabinet around, we have the same thing over here. I just recently got rid of a lot of old paint, so they're empty now. But this is a great little cabinet. This is a project video. If you're looking for something to build, this has been a good addition to the shop. This area of the shop is relatively new. If you were watching last fall, you know that the shop used to end right here at this wall, and so it was much more cramped. Going back maybe 20 years or more, this was a covered porch of the original barn space that I walled in and created a storage space, and it just turned into a storage space that collected junk. And last fall I cleaned the space out. This isn't a load-bearing wall, so I took the wall out. The main project now is to get rid of this piece of furniture that I built when I was maybe 18 years old for my parents, and I ended up getting it back, and it's turned into a tool cabinet, but I really don't like having it in the shop. So this is gonna go somewhere, maybe in my garage or something, or I'll give it to somebody. But the plan here is to make a mobile work cabinet with a dust collection vacuum in the cabinet and a power strip in the cabinet, and then have an area here where I can move that cabinet around and use it as an assembly table and also just a workbench. One of the biggest drawbacks to my workflow right now is using my table saw and outfeed table as my assembly table. Over here I've got my jointer, and this is a Delta DJ20, another old machine I've had for about 25 years or more. So when I first started buying tools, Delta was the big player in the game, and so that's why I have the Delta joiner and the Delta bandsaw, and my first table saw was a 10-inch Delta contractor's saw. So a lot of Delta tools in the shop here, and this is great. This is an 8-inch joiner, and it gets the job done. This has a regular cutting head in it, the one that came with the jointer all those years ago. Maybe down the road sometime soon we'll put a helical head in the jointer, because it's really a nice machine. It's very solid, and it's hooked up to dust collection over here. So all of my dust collection requires a manual blast gate, so very low tech. So if I'm going to run the jointer, I turn on that, I open that blast gate, and I'll shut the blast gate that's hooked up to the saw stop. It works great. Again, this is a small shop, so it's not too difficult to get around, and I don't mind having things low tech. You can see that the dust collection comes up the floor here, tees off into the jointer, and then over here I have another blast gate, and I use that blast gate for my mobile planer. And I just have a lunchbox planer. It's a small Oliver planer with the helical head, and it does a good job. It really puts a nice finish on the board. I buy most of my lumber S4S, so I just don't have the need for a big planer, and I really don't want to dedicate any more shop space to a big machine. This is a relatively new addition to the shop, going back maybe 2 years. It's a mobile workstation. All of these drawers are just on wooden drawer slides, so there's no metal drawer slides, and the reason why I did that was to cut down cost. And you don't really need them. They function really nicely. When I'm making drawers like this, you'll notice that I leave the back a little bit longer, and that's so you can get the back of the drawer and the drawer doesn't fall out of the cabinet. So right now this drawer is a little bit of a mess, but the plan is to get this much more organized. When I built this mobile workstation, one of the attentions to detail was I had this piece of birch plywood with all of this kind of very different kind of grain in it. And so I made sure to cut the drawer fronts so the grain flowed through the drawer fronts, and this is kind of a design element for this piece of shop furniture. Over here I have a small benchtop Delta drill press. All of these machines are plugged in. And over here, again, Delta mortiser. This is a great little machine, still use it today. This workstation is also a charging station. So I've got my chargers on the side here, and I've got 2 power strips in the back. And the only time that I move this workstation out like this is when I'm turning something on the lathe. For the most part, this just stays up against the wall, but if I'm going to turn something on the lathe, I'll move it out a little bit. And this is a little Excelsior Lathe that I got from Rockler. And I don't do that much turning, but if you're going to make a small table, or I've made a planter with this, kind of a shaker inspired planter, it's a nice little lathe to get started on. Since the mask is over here on the workstation, I thought I'd talk about this. This is the mask that I like to use. I've been using it for years. It's the 3M 2091. It's got a rubber gasket. I don't find it to be that uncomfortable. So I think anybody woodworking, they should really wear a mask. And in fact, the first thing I gave to Walter when he started working with me this summer is one of these masks. While we're talking about safety, ear protection, I always wear ear protection. In fact, I'm half deaf in my right ear. That has nothing to do with machines, just something that happened to me when I was a kid. So for the most part, I only use one earplug in my left ear, but I always use it. And again, Walter uses ear protection. Very important to take care of your lungs and your ears. And a little bit more on shop safety, just because people have been asking me about what tools are the most dangerous. The fact is, all of these tools are dangerous. And the idea is to not be afraid of these tools, but respect them. Because it only takes less than a second to cut yourself or worse. And all of these tools are designed to cut wood, and your flesh and bones are softer than wood. So just go slow, take your time, and think about what you're doing. I've had a few comments about the bike in the shop, and I got back into mountain biking about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's definitely become a big part of my life. So I like having the bike out here. It's a motivator to ride. Just kind of when I'm not doing anything, I might work on the bike a little bit. And this whole section here will become kind of a combination bike tool area, or kind of a mechanic spot for the bike, along with some woodworking tools. So I might put some lathe tools back there, but the plan is to probably put T111 on the wall, build some shelving, build a nicer hanging system for the bike, but definitely keep the bike in here because I just like having it in here. I think it looks cool and it motivates me to ride, so we'll see. Over here I've got the Jet 1836 drum sander, and this is all I need. For the work that I do, I don't need a bigger drum sander. In fact, years ago I had the Performax 25x2, which means it had 2 drums in it. And I didn't really need it, and it took up a lot of space in the shop, so I downsized to this. And it does a great job. Sometimes the tracking goes off a little bit, but that's not hard to adjust. I did add cabinets to this saw, so underneath this platform here, the first cabinet is a sandpaper cabinet, and that works out great. And then under here, I've got an area for the nail guns, and over here I've got a place for my grinders and some other tools. But always taking advantage of every little space in the shop to create storage. The one thing that happened with this sander is this originally was on casters, and by adding the weight to these cabinets, it ended up bending these legs. So I ended up taking the casters off and building a dolly and then putting the whole cabinet on, or the cabinets and the sander on a dolly, and so far so good. One of the nicest things about the shop that's a new addition is the lighting in the shop. This is new American Greenlight LED lighting. I talked with Jim over at American Greenlights. I sent him the shop plan where all the benches were, where all the work surfaces were, and he designed this lighting system, and it makes a huge difference. This change happened maybe in September or October of last year, and everybody always comments on it. So if you want to know what lights to put in your shop, definitely check out American Greenlights. Really, really great product and really nice people to work with. And I've also got American Greenlights in the finishing room, and they are a low profile fixture, and we'll take a look at them soon. This is the shed space of the barn, and I did a lot of work to this space last year. Because it was just a storage area for lawn equipment, it never had any insulation in the ceiling, so last year I blew the insulation in. Of course, I've got the American Greenlight LED fixtures. These are the low profile ones. We'll try to get some good shots of those because they're really cool. The ceilings are very low, so the fact that the fixture only hangs down about 1/2 inch from the ceiling is a major plus. This area measures about 9.5 by 20. I'll be using it for a painting and finishing room. Right now it's a little bit unorganized because I'm always in the middle of trying to get more organized. But you can see I've got the fan on the wall over here. Some people will ask, why would you need to filter any of your air? Well, if you're painting something, you don't want all of that paint overspray to go out the fan. So this just keeps things, keeps this overspray inside the building here. And if it goes outside the building, then it's going to end up on the side of your building. Recently, I just built this plywood bin, which isn't completely finished yet. I'll be adding to it to store shorter pieces of plywood on top of it. So you've got plywood going in this way, and then over here, I'll just have little cubbies for those short pieces. And then over on this wall is at the moment kind of a catch-all, and I will be organizing that. So this space isn't quite finished yet, but it's a nice addition to the shop because I can finish things in here, and while the paint or finish is drying, I can continue to work in the main shop. A few people asked about the upstairs of the barn, so let's go check it out. From up here, you can get a good view of the outdoor kitchen work area. Walter and I just finished building that table, and we're going to be shooting a food show here next week with my friend Joe and my friend Casey from Two River Mushroom. This is the upstairs of the barn. This is Walter's work area. So any editing that gets done, any business work that gets done upstairs here in what I consider the studio / office. Right here I've got a built-in underneath This is storage. I've just got a bunch of stuff there. Of course, I've got some of my paintings up here. I've got this sign. I'm actually going to see my friend Sam in Randolph, Vermont, I think in about 2 weeks, to give him this sign. I built that sign for him right before everything happened with the lockdown, and so I just haven't been to Vermont, but that's on the list. Over here I've got a flat file. So I bought this metal flat file, and after I bought the metal flat file, I built this cabinet to store it. So it's a nice use of the space. It's nice to be able to have things in the flat file, and it works great. Some of my small paintings over here, some storage over here. This is my office back here. This old mid-century modern desk I bought for $95. Again, everything's 25 years ago, it seems like. Maybe 20 years ago with this one. But this thing is great. If you were to try to buy something like this today, it'd be very expensive. Probably depending where you buy it. But it's all walnut. I did some repairs to it, and I don't know how long it'll stay out here. If I ever build a house up in Vermont, maybe it will end up there. Over here, I have this fireplace cabinet. This has a bookshelf on the other side. This is one of my paintings. This is aluminum and acrylic on paper. So the aluminum is aluminum leaf. And I made a few videos on how to work with aluminum leaf. This is an old project. There's a funny story here. This is a music stand, a duet music stand. I was commissioned to make a music stand for this guy who played classical guitar. He said to me, I want you to make something with steel and wood, and I don't really care about anything else other than it can raise and lower and be adjustable. So this is what I made him. When I brought it to his home, he said, oh, I didn't think it was going to look like that. And subsequently, I now have it. So I'm kind of happy because I'll never make anything like this again. It was a difficult thing to make, and I wasn't selling it for that much. So I'm actually happy that that deal went south. I think the last thing we'll look at is this wall. You can maybe see that the wall curves up to make an endless wall or an endless backdrop, and that's for photographing furniture. Right now I have a piece of masonite on it. That protects it whenever we do any photography. The idea is to fold up the masonite, take a paint roller, touch up the wall, and we're ready to shoot some furniture. I've got this Churi table. This is something that I made about a year ago, and it's out here again in the studio because I'm trying to get a better photograph of it. I'm really happy with the way this came out. The nice thing about this one is it's got little catches in here to keep the drawer from pulling out of the cabinet. So if you saw this video, you know that, but if not, that's a nice little thing to have because it's very easy to pull a small drawer like this right out of the cabinet. And by having that catch there, whoops, it doesn't happen. Okay, well, thanks for stopping by the shop. I'm really happy with the shop, and this has been a work in progress. If you saw some of my first shows, you'll see that the shop has changed a lot in the last 10 or 12 years, and it is a work in progress. So it takes time. Every couple of months, I'm doing things to make the shop more organized, increase my workflow, and that's just what it is. The shop is a work in progress. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.